Hey there, how's everyone doing this week? Before we get started on sonata form, I thought it'd be helpful to discuss some basic structural functions in music. Just like a set of behaviors can indicate whether a person is happy or sad or angry, a certain set of musical characteristics can indicate whether a piece is beginning or ending or changing or moving in some way. And it would be helpful to talk about these. In Chapter 3 of Timko and Spencer's book, A Practical Approach to Form in Music, they discuss 4 structural functions: the expository, the transitional, the developmental, and the terminative. Most music in all forms will display at least some of these 4 functions to varying degrees, but sonata forms in particular will have all 4 of these, each with a noticeable set of traits. Not all pieces will have every trait, and the presence of a trait doesn't automatically indicate a specific function. But knowing these will assist in your analysis and in just navigating sonata form in general. So the first of these 4 structural functions is the expository function, and that works just as its name implies, that it works to expose the musical material to the listener that's going to be important in the piece. The characteristics of the expository function are going to be a stable tonal center. You're going to have clear phrase structure that's often periodic. So for instance, this is one of the places where you're most likely to have a clear-cut 4 and 4 bar phrases, if it's 4 bars. You're also going to have clearly stated melodies. They'll be usually very declarative, often in octaves, sometimes loud. The point with the expository function is to set the stage so that later treatment of these materials is meaningful to the listener. So the next one is the transitional function, and this connects 2 sections of relative stability. In these sections, the music will usually work to dissolve the previous tonal center and establish a new one. So this is where you're going to have a lot of modulations. Because of that, it's obviously also going to be less harmonically stable. You're also going to have quite often a contrast in the texture. If you're moving into a transitional section, you're more likely to shift from, say, an Alberti bass to, say, like a chordal texture. In transitional sections, you'll also have a less predictable phrase structure as well. This is where your phrases may be asymmetrical. The next one is the developmental function. In developmental sections of music, this is going to introduce contrast into the piece by presenting the expository materials in varied ways. So here, you're more likely to have fragments of previous material. You're more likely to have transpositions of previous material. Developmental sections will usually have sequences. You'll typically have modulations to different keys, often to foreign keys than the primary tonic. You're also more likely to have irregular phrase lengths and elisions between the phrases. These can resemble transitional passages, but developmental passages will be much longer. And the last one is the terminative function. And this brings sections or entire works to a close. Here you'll generally have a stable tonal center. If modulations occur, they tend to be very brief and quickly circle back around to tonic. It usually involves a reduction of information via fragmentation or repetition. The composer will reduce the amount of information by just repeating the same information over and over again. The phrase structure can be either clear or fragmentary here. They'll often sound very cadential. There'll be an alteration of the tonic and dominant. This helps to reinforce the established key. Also, I wouldn't be surprised to see slight development at the end of a piece, say in a coda. This can help, again, bring home the tonic and reinforce that key. So you might try looking at some pieces that you know, or ones that we've studied, and see if you can identify which of these structural functions fit into certain areas. Obviously, you could start at the beginning of a piece and knowing that that's likely going to be expository in nature, but also look at in the middle of a piece and see, is this expository, is this developmental, is this terminative? Usually a piece will exhibit at least a few of the characteristics that we've talked about. And as I said before, these will be very helpful when we look at sonata form, but they really apply to most music in general.